Hey, thanks for joining me. I love Planetary. You know this. Some of you know this because a lot of you don't watch the Planetary videos. It's such a disappointment. It's like one of the favorite comics of my entire life. Art and story. It's just so fantastic, and I know I say it every time. And I also say every time how I'm kind of disheartened that they don't get a lot of views. The people who do watch it are very passionate about it in the same way that I am. But this title and the way the stories are told, it never gets old to me. It's so infinitely fascinating, and I love to share it. I just wish more people saw it. This one is one that I've been really excited to get to because this one has kind of some elements to it that I talk often when I review these books how the stories, like there's the main story of the planetary crew versus the evil characters that are the main antagonists of the series, the evil Fantastic Four. I mention this every time. And the story sometimes focuses on the conflict with the Four, and sometimes it has stories where it goes off in another direction where the planetary crew just runs into some random thing that's not exactly connected to the main narrative through line. But it's always interesting. But I'm always like, every time they have an issue where it's not getting into the main conflict with the Four, it's still great, but I'm like, I want to see the resolution to that story. I was very anxious and excited to see how that story was going to play out. And this issue is kind of both. It touches on the main story that the planetary crew, the characters, and the conflict that they're having with the Four. It kind of touches on that, but it's mostly an adventure into something that's just crazy that kind of has nothing to do with the main story, but it eventually links in a little bit. It's kind of vague. It's kind of hard to understand the way that I'm describing it. But this one had something in it that it was so infinitely fascinating to me when it was revealed in this book, this crazy, interesting thing that they show, which I can't wait to get to. We will right now get into it, but it has a lot of buildup. So you get this cover. I've talked about this before, how I find that it's really interesting that every cover of Planetary is like the title is a different font. There's no standard logo that Planetary as a comic has. It changes with every book. There's a different look, a different vibe with every issue. But on the cover of this, you've got outer space, planets, and some giant object in space. And if you're looking at it, I mean, it's got like kind of jagged protrusions coming from it. It's not like a slick, clean spaceship, for example. Like if it's in space, whether it's a space station or a vehicle of some type, or maybe it's a monster. Who knows? It's an interesting idea. God, it almost looks like the Doomsday Machine from the original Star Trek show. But again, it just lends itself to like the mystery of what is this and what is going on inside it. So we start out, and of course, written brilliantly by Warren Ellis, art by the brilliant and late John Cassidy, colors by Laura Martin. It says Planetary. We get a picture of the Earth, and then we pull back. There's Earth and then the Moon. And then we pull back even farther. Just there is the Earth and the Moon in the far distance. And then here's this shape of something, some kind of material. What is it? You know, that's the mystery. We flip it over. This great splash page of this, again, it's the same thing from the cover. Some kind of, I look at it, we don't know what it is, but I never imagined that this was some kind of life form. It looks like some kind of ancient vehicle in space. And I say ancient because it doesn't have a slick, clean vehicle kind of look like you would expect to see in some kind of hyper advanced alien technology. And it's got giant like asteroids orbiting around it. So it just feels ancient. But as always, one of the best things about this, and it really comes to a head later on in the issue, is that they don't tell us what it is through unnecessary bullshit text. Like, I'm just getting ready to also, when I get done recording this video, I'm going to do a video on Gen 13, and by comparison, you flip it open, there's text boxes everywhere describing stuff that ultimately is kind of not necessary. This was kind of a slog to get through. And then I come to something like this, and I'm sorry. I know I talk about this every time, but I really want to drive the point home. I love to point it out, and I hope that any other creators out there who are writing and drawing their own books might factor this into their storytelling. You don't have to justify your existence as a writer by covering the pages in words. Just let the story tell itself and only put text boxes where necessary. Just seeing this visual lends itself to a mystery alone. There's no amount of text boxes saying drifting through space, an ominous shape takes form, ancient, cold, frozen, unknown. It silently drifts through the universe, untouching, like, shut up. None of that bullshit is necessary. Just look at it and live with the mystery. And then, of course, if everything kind of goes well, we'll get some information. Just like, let the characters talk and tell you what it is. Cut to Zambia. There's a helicopter flying in the sky, coming down into a kind of a valley between some mountains. There's a structure down there. Every time I do these books, I got to shout out how much I love the coloring in this. And again, I'm one of those guys that's always talking about, I love black and white. I'd love to see more black and white comics to see the raw art. But man, when the coloring is this perfect, Planetary just excels every time. And again, this series is like over 2 decades old. So it speaks to the quality of the art and the color choices. Like, the color choices in this background, I wouldn't even, how do you even fathom that? How do you even come up with those color choices? I just have no idea. Looks great. But anyway, helicopter's coming down. There's radio chatter. Planetary 1, you're cleared for landing. We're all ready for you, Mr. Snow. So then here we got the crew. We got Elijah Snow, Jaquita Wagner, and the drummer. And Jaquita's a little bit pissed off because she's telling Elijah that she doesn't know about this facility. And it bugs her that she doesn't know about it. He's like, why didn't I know about this, Elijah? And Elijah says, I have no idea. I still don't remember everything. It's been here 15 years, kind of a low-key operation. So it's alluding to the fact that if you've been reading the series, Elijah started out the series as a guy with no memory. But he recently got a lot of his memories back, but not all of them. There's still some gaps. But Jaquita has been kind of running the crew in his absence, but she has no idea what this place is, and she doesn't like that. It kind of pisses her off. So then this guy shows up. He's the guy who's in charge. He's like, Mr. Snow, it's an honor. I'm Dr. Quilo, site administrator. You recruited me in 1992, but I've been given to understand you may not recall. And Elijah says, you advised me on the Rendlesham Forest event, correct? I don't know if I said that right. The guy's like, yeah, right, exactly. Yeah, thank you. How do you want to proceed? And Elijah says, my colleagues need a briefing, and then we need to review the status of the angels. And Jaquita says, angels? And he's like, yeah, we keep angels here. Jaquita says, I don't like that I don't know about this, Elijah. And he's like, I know. He's like, I understand. Cut to inside the facility. They've got a big monitor up here, and they're talking about how, like, regular Earth monitoring systems can chart about 5% of the sky, but these guys can chart 75% of the sky. They're like, so no one on Earth has noticed what we've seen. There's some kind of giant object just outside, way outside of Earth orbit, 40 times further out than the moon. And they get a picture of it. And they're like, this. So there's that thing that's on the cover and that front splash page. Here's this machine thing. They say it's a construct. It's alien and it's drifting. And Drummer's like, is it going to hit us? I've seen movies about where things hit us. It's not going to be good. And the guy's like, no, it's way too far out. And it's not even going to come within reach of conventional crewed space flight. However, unconventional crewed spaceflight is something that we excel at here. And the drummer catches on to what's going on. He's like, oh, God, you're not sending us into space, Elijah. Please don't send us into space. And Elijah says, relax, I'm not sending you into space. I have angels for that. Switch screen to the angels. And then they cut to this scene of these weird alien beings. There's three of them. One of them standing, one of them's lying down, one of them just kind of crouched over. I would really love to know how Warren Ellis described what these things must look like. Or if he's just told Cassidy to just come up with something wild. You know, it'd be really interesting to know what the description of these things are. But the characters describe them. Elijah says, I've been moving them between secure units since they came down in Germany in the 30s. They're happy to stay so long as they're fed information. They're alive, we think, but with very limited brains. So that's a really interesting kind of concept. They're living, they're alien, but they're very limited in their thinking capacity. So we get a close-up on the faces on them. Very, very weird-looking things. And they continue talking. They say that they record. The current theory is that a race in the galactic core sent them out to document the Milky Way galaxy. One day, I imagine, some clock inside them will reach the hour, and they'll try to take their knowledge home. And so Jaquita says, so you're going to send them up? And Elijah says, they're programmed to pilot spacecraft. We have a vessel from 1951 that'll do the job. And Jaquita's like, what do you mean you have an alien spacecraft? And Elijah kind of explains where it come from. You know, it's from, it's just one of these things that they've collected up. And Jaquita's like, how many alien spacecraft do we have? And he says, 19. She says, you're telling me that we've been visited by aliens 19 times, but SETI has never heard a whisper of an alien signal? And Elijah says, interesting, isn't it? Let me tell you what I think is the most interesting thing about this setup and this conversation they're having. I have mentioned this before, but this comic is supposed to be set in the Wildstorm universe with the Wildcats and Gen 13 and Wetworks and Backlash and Stormwatch. And if you know all those books, there are fucking aliens everywhere. But I've said before that, again, I don't know this, but I just kind of guessed that Warren Ellis said, yeah, I just want to do a comic book where these guys kind of discover all this cool science fiction stuff. And it'll be set in the Wildstorm universe, I swear. But he never, ever addresses that except maybe once in the earlier issues. And so it's funny because in the Wildstorm universe, there's aliens everywhere. But here they're just basically like, this feels like an X-Files kind of thing, a mysterious thing where there's just a little bit of information, a little bit of a hint of a thing, but the implications of what you see in a very limited capacity begs bigger questions that never get answered. So it makes you wonder, and it makes you ponder the grandeur and the wonder of the universe, the scary horror of the universe. It's so frightening and intriguing all at the same time. It's very X-Files-ish in that sense. And again, we're just ignoring Wildstorm comics. And I love it. I wonder if Warren Ellis was just sitting back laughing his ass off going, I ain't going to put Wildstorm characters in this. So they keep talking about these angel creatures and what they're going to do. Jaquita says, and why are we interesting enough to be visited 19 times? And Elijah goes on, he says, who knows? I personally think it's because we accessed the bleed too early. It's one to come back to. Like, he's like, it's a good question, but right now we got to focus on the mission at hand. We're going to put the angels close to the object and wait. So they're going to send them up and put them near it and just kind of see what they do. And then, so Jaquita's like, well, why are we doing that? And they said the four, again, the evil Fantastic Four that are in this series. He's saying that they can see shit just as good as us, if not better. And if there's some giant weird alien thing drifting near Earth orbit, even if it's that far out, they're going to go for it. And this would be a chance for us to see some stuff we've never seen before. They're saying that they'll send Jacob Green. Now, that is the name of the character of the evil Fantastic Four, who is the Thing. And we've seen all the characters in their kind of altered forms. We've seen the Johnny Storm, the Sue Storm, and the Reed Richards, but we've never seen the Ben Grimm. We've seen him in human form in some flashbacks, but we've never seen what he looks like as a monster. And the characters have not seen them either. They just know that he's there. They're like, I bet you they send him, and this will give us a chance to see him. And they're like, I don't think that the Johnny Storm character, he's not part of their family, and because there's been some trouble. The evil Fantastic Four, they're kind of fracturing. They're not doing so well together. They're kind of having internal struggles. But they're like, anyway, they'll send Jacob Green, the Thing, and we can get a look at them. And so Jaquita says, and we'll get a look at him, and we'll get to record information on it, right? And there's this ominous, heavily shadowed panel where Elijah Snow says, right. Now this is going to pay off why it's heavily shadowed, implying ulterior motive, maybe, in the next issue. But now we cut to this spaceship thing, and I'm pretty sure this thing has been introduced in a previous issue, several issues ago. It's this alien ship parked right there, just kind of hovering in this kind of launch tube. The characters come along, and again, no words anywhere. Like, how many comics can you see out there that have visuals like this, and it's just not plastered with text everywhere? And the characters are just looking up in awe at it. I love it. We just get to marvel at John Cassidy's work. The angels themselves, they're coming out, and Jaquita's like, so how did you convince these angels to go? Like, how did you get them to agree to this? Elijah says, all we had to do was show them our telemetry on the object. They'd never seen anything like it. They asked to go. They told us they love us for it, which is really interesting because they say that these creatures just record information. Here's this giant object they've never seen, and they're like, oh God, please let us go look at this. So I like how the creatures enter the spaceship, and then it's just illustrated in this way, like the metal just kind of, like liquid metal almost, just kind of opens up to close behind them. That's a really interesting way to visually show that. I love it. So then the drummer, he's sitting there, he's like, because they're just standing on a walkway right next to the ship. He's like, what are we going to sit here while they fire up the engines and burn us all? And Elijah's like, no, you're actually going to enjoy this, you little freak. And then the ship just starts glowing. And the drummer, who's kind of the magician, I almost said musician, the magician of the group, he deals in magic, which is, he's kind of described it, it's just, magic is just basically information and manipulation of information in a way. And so the ship starts glowing, and he's tripping out. He's like, oh God, I think I'm on drugs. The information flow in the room just changed majorly. That thing is, he's like, I don't know. Could it be eating and crapping out information? So then we see kind of a visualization of energy spewing out of it. So in these panels, they get into a kind of a long, lengthy, kind of science-y description of how the universe is maybe not made up of matter and energy, but information. And this thing can absorb information and expel information, therefore giving it thrust. It's a weird concept that they kind of explain. It's an odd concept that it's weird. I like that it's different, and it's a weird kind of trippy science fiction idea. But the ship takes off quickly, like it's out the launch tube, it's into space, and off it goes. And their conversation continues here to kind of get into explaining a concept that Warren Ellis has introduced in The Authority when he had that book, and Stormwatch, where how the universe is made up of a specific kind of the nature of the universe and how it's built and constructed is different from what they've always kind of understood. But then the universe kind of, through the way that the universe is constructed, it creates protectors of certain areas, of certain locations on planets, which they talk about. They refer to them as century babies, meaning there are characters in these books that were born on January 1st, 1900. Long lived with extraordinary abilities. And they talk about certain characters that have shown up in these books. Axel Brass, Anna Hark, probably the rest of that whole crew, Elijah Snow himself. This is a concept that Warren Ellis has introduced in his books, where people born on January 1st of 1900 were like character or beings created by the universe to protect it. It's a weird, interesting concept that I think is really fascinating. They're kind of digging into how and why that happens in a way. But anyway, back to the spaceship. There's the giant construct in space. The informational drive spaceship is coming up to it. It opens up again. The three angel characters walk out. They fly off and find kind of an opening in this massive structure. They go inside it, and they are getting a signal beamed back to the planetary crew. They can see everything the angels see. And it's dark, and they're like, well, what happened? Did we lose the feed? And they're like, no, they're just in a dark area. Just hold on. Oh, there's the light. They've moved into a lit area. Just hold on a second for our eyes to adjust. So what do they see inside this giant construct? And again, another wordless page. And the visuals beg you to consider what the hell exactly we're looking at and the mysteries that it implies. So you see, like, it's a big cavernous, like, cave. Like, there's, things hanging from the top, dangling down. But there's a frickin' mountain and waterfalls and trees and rolling mountainous hills and a giant, massive chair throne thing just sitting in the middle of it. And so Jaquita's like, how big? And they're like, it's the size of Manhattan. I don't know if they mean the chair or this entire room. But the idea, just to give you a sense of scale, like Manhattan Island, like New York, right? That's how big just this one room is. So it gives you a sense of scale of how big this vessel must be. So I'm like, a giant chair? That's really weird. So the angels keep flying through the caves. As they look down on the ground, there's some humanoid figures running through the trees. And they're like, I see people. Is this theirs? Like, is this giant vessel theirs? And the scientist guy who runs the place is like, I don't think so. It's not built to their scale, and they don't look like tool users. A ship this size, this old, with its own ecosystem, they could have evolved there. So they're basically saying that this thing is so ancient that somehow, some way, that it's just evolved an ecosystem of life inside this vessel, which I think is profoundly fascinating. I don't know how an ecosystem evolves mountains and waterfalls. I don't know that I care, because it's a weird, interesting concept, but that's what they're getting at. This thing is probably millions, if not billions of years old. And there's just, life has just developed inside this thing. So they see that the angels are flying to another part of the chamber. They're like, what's this? They said they found a way into the next compartment of the vessel. They must be attempting to review the entire vessel before recording each element. So then the next thing we see was like one of the most interesting kind of things I've ever seen in these books, that, again, it begs so many weird questions. They move, the angels fly into the next room. There's a giant, massive chair. They move into another room, and what do we have? This vast, miles-long stretch of mountains and a giant, dead, rotting corpse of what I'm just assuming, they don't say, but this is Galactus. And I'm like, the whole concept of Galactus is fascinating, and that the version of this character in this book is an ancient, godlike being, and he's just dead. He died for some reason in this spaceship. He's been dead for untold millennia. He's still rotting, and somehow life has just evolved inside his spaceship. I'm like, and again, no words, no text boxes. You just sit here with the visuals, and you have to just think in your head about, what does this mean? What could this mean? And no amount of text and giving it explanation would make it any better. Like I was saying about the origins of the ship on the first page. The more you explain it, the less interesting it becomes. Just letting it sit here and just make you wonder Like this is Galactus, the ancient god that helped fight with the heroes in the Infinity Gauntlet against Thanos. You know, this is that version of the character. He's just dead. So who is he? Where is he from? What was his goals? What was his intentions? Is he a benevolent god creature? Is he a destructive world eater? We will never know. Spoilers, this is all you ever get of him. They don't ever address it again. This issue does continue into the next book, but this Galactus being, you never find out anything else than what you get right here. Here's his ship. His chair was over there. There is his dead body. This is all you get. And again, I'm like, I want to know, but again, the question is more interesting than the answers. So giant guy just lying there. I love that spread so much. It's so interesting. So then we get to see some close-ups of the creature. Now, one thing that adds just a little bit more mystery, and this is my take on this, is that you get a close-up on the eye, and it looks like the eye is still pulsating with energy. Now, if this is Galactus, again, they don't say that, but that's how I'm interpreting it, because the bad guys in this book are the Fantastic Four. So if you're going to have the Fantastic Four, you have to have some version of Galactus, and he's just a giant dead body. Fascinating. But it looks like his eye is still energetic. Is he still alive? Is he still dying? Is he watching, looking? Is he in a hibernation? Who knows? Maybe the coloring is just highlighted and it's not supposed to imply that he is still potentially alive, but it's highlighted in a way that makes me think that there's still energy in him. We cut to a shot of on the one of the long fingers. There is a group of these humanoid kind of primitive creatures walking across his hand, across his fingernail. As we back out farther, one of the fingers, there's a bunch of like large ravenous creatures eating the flesh off the bone on one of his fingers. Up to its mouth, there's a bunch of monkey creatures, like it looks like thousands of them, that live inside his mouth. Underneath his foot, there's like a primitive tribe underneath the shadow of his foot. In this panel, there's a bunch of nipple worshippers. No kidding, there's a frickin' giant Galactus nipple and a bunch of skeletal bodies touching the center part. It's frickin' hilarious and interesting and weird. Underneath the bent leg, there's a shadow and some draping like trees and branches and stuff. Just crazy interesting, crazy weird. It's just like, again, it makes you wonder what is going on here. And so the Planetary crew are just as like shocked. The drummer's like, this is just like, he has no words. And Chiquita's like, yeah. And the scientist guy who runs this place, he's like, he died. Is it even a he? I wonder how long. And Elijah, he's checking his watch. He's like, me too. The scientist guy says, Mr. Snow, we have a hit from the scanner system. Another vehicle has parked around the object. One life sign, very strong, high thermal output. So there is another vessel coming along, and Elijah smiles. He says, finally, Jacob Green, and it leaves it on a cliffhanger, to be continued. Often these books are a single contained story, but this issue, these ones, one leads right into the other. And again, because we've never seen the evil version of the Thing in this comic yet, they're basically saying in the next issue, we get to see him. I was so excited to see it. I could not wait. I was like so into this book. Every one of these issues presents the wildest, weirdest concepts, and this ancient version of Galactus just sparked my imagination forever. Like, who is he? What is he doing? What would he be like if he was alive? Would he try to take over Earth? But again, who knows? And again, it kind of like, who cares? I'm just repeating myself, but you give me answers and it becomes less interesting. So, as if you couldn't tell, I am super excited for this thing. I love this stuff so much. This is right up in one of my main interests is like science fiction fantasy stuff. And I love this. It works so well. Warren Ellis crafted like the greatest comic book, and I love it so much. So I don't know. What more can I say? I couldn't possibly hype it up more. I wish more people watch these videos, but that's all I've got for this one. So thank you for watching. I really appreciate it, and I'll see you next time.